Well, hi, and welcome to the Family Ministries podcast. We're so glad that you are joining us this month. My name is Eric Williams. I'm Directional Leader of Student Ministries. I'm here with Barb Bruce, the Directional Leader of Spiritual Formations, and Lauren Snyder, Directional Leader of Cedarville Kids Ministry. And so this month, we are hoping that we can have a little conversation about something that's been big, I know, in all three of our lives, the topic of change. Now, that's not a very popular topic a lot. In fact, we've just been talking about how much resistance we tend to have to change as people. But I want to ask Barb, because you have gone through quite a few changes this year already, some that you've already expected were coming. So you want to talk about how you've been handling that?
Like everyone here at Cedar Creek, this year in 2015's carried a lot of changes. Change is something that we always think of in the negative, but there are many positive changes. I've seen lots of babies being born around the creek, lots and lots of marriages. In my household, we have a change coming up. Our oldest daughter's graduating from college in just a couple of weeks. Earlier this year, I had a book come out. That was a big change. The Fabulous Conference team, my colleagues and I, this was our final Fabulous Conference, which was a great thing. But it's also a change. When I think about the idea of change, one of the visual symbols for all of us we can all connect to is in April and May. Not only do we have lots of spring rain and lots of May flowers, but
Lots of potholes.
Lots of potholes. Yeah, but spring brings out the orange barrels.
Yes.
And when we're traveling on our roadways in the area, the orange barrels signify the different changes in the traffic patterns. And so when I drive on 75 South or 75 North, the traffic alters based on how those orange barrels are lined up. And I don't get to make a choice as to whether or not I want to change my pattern of direction. I just have to go with what is in front of me. Yeah. And I also thought about it, when the traffic patterns change, I actually have a choice. I can change traffic pattern or not. But if I don't change, I'm either going to hit a car or I'm going to hit a barrier. And once I hit something, once I refuse to make the change, my progress stops. Yes. So when we think about the idea of change, change is real. But there's another piece that today we want to highlight, is the idea of transition. Change is it's a situation in our lives that isn't as it was before, but transition is how we mentally adjust to it. As a staff team, especially our leadership team, we've been reading a book by William Bridges called Managing Transitions, except for I downloaded the wrong book, and so I've been reading The Way of Transition. And I want to share with you a quote that Bridges talks about that I think will be helpful for everyone. And the quote is this: that we resist transition not because we can't accept the change, but because we can't accept letting go of the piece of ourselves that we have to give up, and because the situation has changed. Our deep desire in life is for us to move through life, for us to be able to thrive and to grow. And sometimes change doesn't feel like we're moving in a direction where we can thrive or grow. Things happen, good things and bad things. Transition is how we manage ourselves. Transition is the place where we allow God to work through us. And so if we think about it, that when something comes to an end, at some point there will be a new beginning, but that space in the middle is really uncomfortable. But the beautiful place is that's where God often meets us. Yep. So I'm going to turn it over to Lauren now, because in some ways, you and your family are kind of in this beautiful middle where you see God doing some new stuff in your life.
Right. I think we are. And it's really tempting to want to figure out, like, the next year, the next 2 years, the next 5 years. And I'm really doing my best to not do that. Yeah. We were at a conference recently, and a friend of ours got to share a devotion about Philip and a journey that he went on. It's from the book of Acts. And as he was traveling along one day, essentially kind of, God was calling him in one direction, and then God met him along the path and brought somebody into his path, an Ethiopian who had some questions about God, and Philip got to answer the questions. The guy decided to follow Jesus and was baptized right there, and then from right there, Philip was transported somewhere completely different. And so you kind of put yourself in Philip's shoes. Like, when he got up that morning, he sensed God calling him someplace, headed in that direction. God met him and then completely changed his path. And I think for all of us, you're talking about changes that we see coming, but a lot of times there's things that you just don't see coming. And so when I start thinking ahead and thinking about what's coming, I want to kind of manhandle things and figure it all out. And I have to just dial it back and go, okay, what do I know? I know today I can work with my family, work with the church, and kind of start to cast vision. Where is God calling us? What do we think we're supposed to be doing? But at the same time, hold it lightly enough that if, and really when, God shows up and diverts our path, wherever that might be, we need to be ready for that and obedient to it and not afraid of it. And I'm so thankful at this point to be 35 and to have had kind of layers of experiencing and recognizing God's faithfulness in my life. The times where, we wanted to be pregnant and it took us a lot longer than we thought, but God provided that baby just at the right time. The time when we wanted to buy one house and God made that deal completely fall through and provided something so much better. I could go on and on just thinking about that. So amongst all of the change, looking ahead and getting excited about what's ahead, but also taking a break and going, but ultimately, God, this is your future, and wherever you're going to direct us, we're in it for the long haul.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
I think that's very interesting. And, so Barb, you brought up about the times where something new is coming. There's like a new change on the horizon, or the end is there. Or, when Lauren talks about something new just crashes in and you've got to adjust and you got to be willing to move. And I just think about all the people out there, the times where you're kind of stuck in that pre-change moment where you're just kind of stuck in the land of the status quo, and you know that you've got to make a change. There's something out there that you have to change, but you haven't taken that step yet. So for those of you that, maybe it's a relationship issue, or it's just like, this just isn't healthy, or, maybe it's a communication problem between a spouse or a loved one that you just have to fix. And maybe it's a job situation, maybe it's a lifestyle choice, a habit, a hurt. Sometimes there's sins and struggles, but other times it's just, I've got to make this change in my life. And so a couple of things that I think that you can do when you want to make a change is, one, you got to have this vision of what do you want the new you to look like. So sometimes we're forced into a change, sometimes we know something's naturally going to happen, and then there's other times where God's just stirring up in us that says that this, where you're at right now, is not good. Yep. And so having that clear vision of what the new change will look like will help. I actually like to talk to people when they're struggling with this idea of what does that look like? How am I still in this habit or whatever pace of life I'm in? I say, get out a calendar and circle it and say, when are you going to get over it? Is it going to be October and you're still going to be carrying this weight? Is it going to be, if you're unhappy with your job, like how long are you going to go being unhappy?
I'd like to be miserable for 3 more months.
Yes, exactly. And I think when you actually look at it and you go, okay, I don't want to be doing that anymore by June or July. It helps give you that vision for the future. And then Ecclesiastes says that one person is easily defeated, and so there's this picture of bringing together multiple people, because 2 people can stand back to back and fight, and a triple braided cord is hard to break. And so gathering around a community not that's interested in anything other than you personally, and seeing that change live out. So the good people that you need to surround yourself with, and some of the others that you're like, no, I'm not going to go to you for advice
not
on
helpful.
This area, right? And finally, Hebrews 12 tells us that we need to kind of expect some of that resistance, because as we're going to make changes, there's these times. I know every time I try to go on a diet, every time I try to get on a workout plan, I get to the point where it's like, day 1, I'm in it. Day 2, I'm in it. Day 3, I'm a little sore, or I just don't like kale anymore. I don't like kale. I just can't eat another salad. And then day 4 and 5, and you're just like, yeah, forget it. And then my workout clothes don't get used anymore. But the Bible says that God is using the times, those times where you feel like He's working it out. That's time for discipline. And so sometimes our biggest breakthroughs come on the other side of the biggest resistance. Yep. And so like Hebrews 12, 4 and 5 says that God is using those things to discipline you in your lives. And so in those change, when you experience that resistance, stick close to that community. Also, ultimately, stick close to God, because He's using that to discipline you for a vision of the future that He has for you, because He calls us His masterpiece. And so if we want to be prepared for the good things God has in front of us, we need to take the discipline and the steps now to change those things in order to become what what God has for us.
Sure.
Well, thank you for joining us for our Living It Out podcast today about navigating change. If you watched this and it was helpful, then go ahead and share this on your social media with others. Our goal here is, no matter if you're married, single again, with or without kids, that we are able to just help you in the everyday things that you're dealing with in life. Change is something that we all navigate. Change is something that we all struggle with. But together, when we look towards God and when we help each other, we are able to get to the places where God wants us to be. So thank you for joining us, and God bless.